Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So this is our last class, hopefully, if I last through the whole class. Krishna's mercy, I'm here. I'm feeling not too bad, so hopefully I'll last through the class. Last class of ISOPANISAD, and then you have 10 days for your exam. And please don't freak out about your exam. It's going to be easy. So in text 15 and 16, what did we hear? There were some prayers, right? Huh? Yeah, what was the prayer about?
Basically like to stop the effulgence and then...
Okay, so to remove the effulgence. Okay, good. So, so there were prayers, and the devotee was taking shelter of the personal aspect of the Supreme Lord. And now this section, it's very beautiful, very heartfelt kind of section, something with a lot of bhakti. So it's something that devotees can easily connect with, right? So we heard so much philosophy, but now it's the time of death. The ISOPANISAD started with the invocation where we heard how the living entities were created as complete beings. They're complete in their ability to realize their relationship with Krishna at any point of time. And all through we heard many guidelines of how we can have that vision of completeness all the time, right? But now this devotee has come to the point of death after, the Lord has even removed the effulgence, and he's, come to understand the personal feature of the Lord. And now he's praying at the time of death. No devotee actually ever feels like he's got it all together and he's ready for death. No devotee will ever feel like that. So here the devotee is praying very, very humbly and calling out for the mercy of the Lord, right? Can you think of any devotees from our scripture who are extremely qualified, but yet they were really calling out for mercy of the Lord at the time of death? Anybody comes to mind?
Ajamil.
Ajamil? Well, Ajamil was calling out to his son, not exactly to the Lord, right?
Bhishmadev.
Bhishmadev, very good example. I was thinking about Bhishmadev, very qualified, but he was on the bed of arrows waiting for Krishna to come. Who else? Parikshit Maharaj, yeah, kind of.
Gajendra.
Gajendra is a little different, I would say. Anybody from Chaitanya Lila that you can think of?
Haridas Thakur.
Huh?
Haridas Thakur.
Haridas Thakur, yes, exactly. Haridas Thakur, extremely qualified Namacharya. but he wanted to leave his body before the Lord. Anyone else? Is there some devotee who offered prayers? Mukundmala Stotra? Who's the devotee? That's the name of the book. King Kulashekara. Yes? Yes, that's King Kulashekara. Yeah. There's another nice devotee, Madhavendra Puri, also from Lord Chaitanya's Leela. So in fact, at the time of death, extremely qualified devotee, elevated devotee. In fact, he only came down to take part in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And at the time of death, very, very humbly, he was calling out for the Lord's mercy. And then he had a disciple named Ramachandra Puri. And Ramachandra Puri thought that he needs to instruct his spiritual master. And he said, why are you lamenting? Why don't you just take shelter of Brahman, and just be quiet and leave your body, kind of a message, And Madhavendra Puri, he said, you just get out of here. If I see your face, I don't know where I'm going to go. So you please leave from here. So Ramachandra Puri, we know that, he didn't have a very good attitude. He was trying to instruct a spiritual master. And because of all this, later he becomes like some kind of impersonalist. In fact, he even goes to the extent of criticizing and instructing even Lord Chaitanya himself, right? And he doesn't have a very good end. In contrast, there was another disciple of Madhavendra Puri named Ishvara Puri. And Ishvara Puri very much appreciated this humble mood of Madhavendra Puri. And later, he got so much mercy of his spiritual master that later, that Ishvara Puri becomes the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya himself, right? So no devotee ever feels like, okay, I'm qualified, let death come or let whatever come. They're feeling themselves very humble and unqualified, and they're calling out for mercy. And especially at the time of death, we don't even have the time to say, okay, tomorrow I'll chant better rounds, or I'll improve my sadhana, or, I'll work on my anarthas, I'll purify myself in some way. We don't have the time then. So what do? All you can do is humbly accept where you are and call out for mercy and request for the Lord to purify us. So that's what is happening in these two verses. So let's read mantra 17 together. Vayuranilam amritam athedam hasmantam shariram om kratosmara kritam smara kratosmara kritam smara. Let this temporary body be burned to ashes, and let the air of life be merged with the totality of air. Now, O my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices, and because you're the ultimate beneficiary, please remember all that I have done for you. So, what's he saying here? Prabhupada in the purport, he actually gives a little essence of this verse. He says, in this mantra, the living entity prays to enter the spiritual kingdom of God after relinquishing his material body and material air. The devotee prays to the Lord to remember his activities and the sacrifices he has performed before his material body is turned into ashes. He makes this prayer at the time of death with full consciousness of his past deeds and of the ultimate goal, right? So he's asking for his air of life to be merged with the totality of air. What does that mean exactly? Our acharyas explain what that means. What does it mean? I mean, of course, our life airs will automatically merge into, the universal airs in one sense. But it has also a deeper meaning than that. It's not just that physical merging of airs that this devotee is talking about. He is saying that basically before I die, right, let my attachment to subtle body be completely finished. Let the subtle body merge. What is the subtle body? What is it made up of? Mind, intelligence, and false ego, right? So let that merge with the Mahatattva. But really for us, what it means is that before we die, we have to give up our subtle body, because it is this subtle body that keeps us going from one birth to another birth to another birth, or from one body to another body to another body. This is what we carry with us. And subtle body means what? When do we have this material subtle body? As long as we have any attachment to the subtle body in the form of enjoyment, right? That's what we try to do in this material world, in the form of enjoyment. Or sometimes if we cannot enjoy positively, we enjoy through suffering. So there's always two sides to the coin. So if we don't get positive enjoyment, we also enjoy suffering, because the mind is actually like an addict. It doesn't care about positive or negative. What it cares often is about, an addict cares about what? That intensity of experience. Our mind is like that. It cares about the intensity of experience. It doesn't care sometimes whether it's positive or negative. So that's why you keep going back to those suffering loops, right? Sometimes even there's no suffering, people who like to suffer will find some reason to just, like there are some people who just look at the negative. There's so much positive going on in their life, but they just can't look at that, right? So we have to give up these things. And we learned before that Krishna tells in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, what do we need to give up in terms of enjoyment? Means that the propensity to enjoy, the propensity to become the owner or controller, and the tendency to want to be the benefactor or the friend of all living entities, or basically that I want to be appreciated by everyone. This is what we have to give up. These are the 3 main needs that Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, right? And one of the ways the desire to be the friend of all manifests is also, that we want appreciation from everyone. And if we don't get it in the positive way, then sometimes we try to take the role of a victim, and then we try to get some attention or some compassion or some, just some attention. That's how we do it, from friendly feelings from others. So basically, if we have any of this attachment, then we have to take birth again. So this devotee is saying, therefore, after athedam, this word athedam is used. So after that, after this happens, then no problem, let my body be burned to ashes. Because if this doesn't happen, then even though my body is burned to ashes, I will come back and take another body, right? So we have to, in this lifetime, we have to make sure that we don't have all these attachments. And these attachments come also in a range of feelings like, right, anger, or sometimes even apathy. Apathy is the lowest, where you don't have any feeling, right? That is also feeling. Apathy, greed, lust, anger, sadness, all these things. So if I say I'm angry, that means, I have an identification there with anger. So we have to give up all these different identifications and attachments, and our only identification should be that I'm a servant of Krishna. That is when then we can have a later. So, and even sometimes to good things, right? We talked about there's always 2 sides to this coin. So even positive identifications like, I look good, I'm beautiful, or, what was the attachment Narad Muni had? Anybody remembers from Bhagavatam? In Bhagavatam, Krishna had appeared to Narad Muni and then he disappeared. And he said that you're not pure yet. What was his impurity? Anybody knows? One of the impurities anyway. Of course, his prema or his love had to mature more. That was one thing. But it's described, our acharyas describe, that he was somewhat attached to nature. He liked nature, in a particular way. So that was a contamination. Wow, what's wrong in liking nature? We can like anything, but we have to like that in connection with the Supreme Lord, not for my personal enjoyment. And so Krishna appeared and then he disappeared, right? So that's a very graphic example. So the devotee is praying like this. And Prabhupada, in the first paragraph of the purport, he's talking about how this material body is completely foreign to the living entity. So let's look at things further. Then in the purport, Prabhupada makes this sentence. The highest development of one's spiritual sense is described in this mantra. One should give up the material body, which will be turned to ashes, and allow the air of life to merge into the eternal reservoir of air. And then he further says, so of course, in between these two paragraphs, Prabhupada describes about how the yogis, how they do that. The yogis basically, they move their air from the lower chakras to the higher chakras, and then finally they leave their life air from the top chakra, and they have the ability to kind of go to whichever place they want, sort of. But Prabhupada then he says, but the highest perfection of such changes occurs only when the living entity is able to give up the material body altogether, as suggested in this mantra, and enter into the spiritual atmosphere where he can develop a completely different type of body, a spiritual body which never has to meet death or change. So here, what we're hearing is basically, this is like the beginning point for a devotee in one sense. One of the, because for devotees, they don't have any attachment to the material body, right? So we're taught this from day one. In fact, this is something that attracts us to the movement for many of us. You're not the body, you're the soul. It's like such a relief. I'm not the body, But then, of course, we don't apply ourselves to that principle. Later, we somehow or the other still get attached to our body and so on. But we are still able to talk about death very easily, right? Like devotees talk about death, they plan their death. Sometimes they will go to India, to Vrindavan to leave their body. So death is something that they can easily talk about. Part of the reason is because, there's certain amount of detachment. They understand that we are not the body. Whereas when somebody doesn't understand that, you can't utter the death word. It's like, shh, don't talk about death, But it's such an inevitable thing, right? So for devotees, they're okay. They can talk about it. They're not afraid, right? Because why? There's no identification. There's no attachment. As long as these two are not there, then there's no fear. There's no fear of this inevitable death, because then they just see that this is, I've taken Krishna's shelter. We're just passing on. In fact, the picture here is the funeral of a very, very great soul. This is the funeral of Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu. And for those of you who know him, very exalted devotee. He's somebody who translated the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the Sandarbhas. He also actually translated Srimad Bhagavatam from 10th canto, 15th chapter onwards after Prabhupada stopped. He was actually the main person who translated, but most often we hear Hridayananda Maharaj's name. So anyway, he likes to stay in the background. But Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu did a lot of work. So anyway, I was actually there in Vrindavan when he left his body. And I had only met him once before that, literally 1 week before that. And he made such an impression on me, because he was really a person who had zero attachment to the material body. He had no ego, basically. And during his memorial service, everyone who was there, they said the same thing, that he had a body, but he had no false ego. So here's like a wonderful example of somebody who completely lived on that platform. And you can feel it. Such a person, when he speaks anything, oh, it just makes such a deep impression. No ego, because it's not coming from an ego platform. There's no envy, So it's very otherworldly, a moment association. Like I cannot forget the 10 minutes that I spoke to him. I can never forget in my life. It's like a permanent impression, It's completely otherworldly. So anyway, the fear goes away for a person, who's there, but for the rest of us, we have to cultivate this step-by-step detachment from the body. And of course, Krishna helps devotees, right? There's many, many examples of where Krishna helps devotees, towards the end of their life, even if they are not perfect devotees. We'll talk about a few examples. So Prabhupada says also in the purport, one who is completely under the rule of material nature remembers the heinous activities he performed during the existence of his material body, and consequently he gets another material body after death. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this, right? Whatever state of being or whatever you remember at the time of death, that's what you'll attain in your next life. So if we have not cultivated Krishna consciousness throughout our life, then what will we remember? Because the whole life flashes in front of your eyes when we leave our body. And then, whatever we are most attached to, that's what we'll hang on to. And that's based on that, we'll get our next body. So what is this devotee asking therefore? He's saying, Om Krato Smara, Kritam Smara. Sit straight. You're falling asleep. I know you're tired. Om Krato Smara, Kritam Smara, Krato Smara, Kritam Smara. He's repeating it 2 times actually. So Krato means supreme beneficiary, and Kritam means all that I've done for you. He's saying, oh my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices because you're the ultimate beneficiary. Please remember all that I've done for you. So different acharyas give different meanings for this. So Baladeva Dibhushan, he says that the first krato is referring to the mind. So the devotee is talking to his own mind and saying, my dear mind, please remember devotional service. You tried to practice this all through your life, and remember devotional service now. And then the second krato, he says, Baladeva Dibhushan says, it's referring to the Lord. He's telling the Lord, please remember what I did all through. And Vedanta Deshika, he is from the Shankara Sampradaya, yeah. So he says actually that he's saying 2 times because of the urgency, right? When somebody is like feeling that urgency, say, do it, come on, do it, like we may say it, you should repeat it 2 times. That's one reason. And yet other acharyas, they say that he's just remembering the Lord, because krato also means, one name of the Lord. So these are the different meanings. So he's calling upon the Lord. But the nature of the Lord is, so here Prabhupada is saying, the devotees, however, develop a sense of love for Godhead by practicing devotional service to the Lord. Even if at the time of death a devotee does not remember his service to the Lord does not forget him, right? So even we are not perfected. I had a very recent experience just within the last 6 months. One of my friends in Chicago, Naperville, from where I moved to DC, she was my age. She was, she had diagnosed with cancer. And she was a very simple devotee. You wouldn't think of her as someone who's very, very elevated, or, it wasn't like her practices were super up there or anything. But then she had like a lot of mood of service, and she used to serve Tulsi very nicely. And at the time, as time was approaching, right, I was always very concerned that, she should hear more, read more. She's not, doing as much. And I was trying my best to like make her hear more and so on. But of course, she was more attracted to Kirtan, and she was trying to hear as much Kirtan as she could. But as time was approaching, many amazing things happened. Of course, her Guru Maharaj, Jayapataka Maharaj, sent her a recorded message as, encouraging her and trying, helping her to take shelter. All the devotees in the community, they came together and did Kirtan at their home like few times a week. And I think this was within the last 2 weeks before she left her body. One day, one devotee felt, that there was the presence of Narasimhadev from Mayapur in the hall, right there. And later, this devotee who had cancer, she also actually shared that. They both were talking, and she said, I really felt like Narasimhadev was like sitting next to me today. And then this devotee who was hearing, who was just part of the Kirtan, she said, I felt his presence too. And of course, this devotee was sharing that it's because of you that I got to feel his presence. Anyway, it's Krishna's mercy. And another time, some devotees came from Columbus to just, one Prabhupada's disciple came from Columbus to just chant Kirtan for this devotee. And this devotee was chanting Kirtan, and then suddenly he just stopped and he started crying. And then her husband asked, what happened? Why are you crying, Prabhu? And he said, well, something amazing happened. Vrinda Devi just came, and she was wearing this colored dress and so on. And she said that I'll take care of her. Don't worry. She's going back, Krishna. And I was thinking, Krishna is so grateful because she did a lot of service to Tulsi. In her house, Tulsis used to be like trees. And anyway, I could go on and on about it. And then towards the end too, there were so many things orchestrated. She left at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. Everyone was sleeping, but her husband suddenly got up half an hour before that, as though somebody woke him up. And then he called some devotees, and none of them picked up the phone, but they suddenly woke up, and then they checked their phones. And then they came, and then they were loudly chanting. And then in half an hour, finally her husband just said, Krishna's waiting for you, go. And I'll take care of the children. And as soon as he said that, she left. And she looked like an angel even after she left her body. She didn't look like a dead body or something, So even somebody so simple, right? It gives us a lot of hope. Sometimes we can tell stories of amazing devotees, but it gives us a lot of faith to hear, stories of some simple devotees, right? There was another devotee also who went just for a regular medical checkup, and then he was diagnosed with, end-stage cancer. And then he decided to go to Vrindavan to leave his body. And then he was in a lot of pain and quite distressed and so on. And devotees would come every day, meet him and go back and like that. Then one day somebody came to visit him. And, that somebody who was coming regularly to visit him, visited him that day too. And then he saw that the face of this devotee with cancer, just like something changed. He was just looking happy. And then he asked, what happened? You're looking different today. And I said, no, nothing. And he said, no, you look happy. What is it? Something happened? And he was hesitating to share, but then finally he shared. Well, Radharani came and she said that you'll be okay. I'm going to take you back home. That's amazing. Amazing. There's many, many stories like that we could talk about, right? It's so encouraging to hear these amazing stories. many stories. Anyway, there was another devotee too, also one Italian devotee that I met in Vrindavan, and anyway, he also said that Radharani came and showed him the real Vrindavan, and he was like before leaving his body, he was like, shouting, "Beautiful, beautiful!" Like in Italian, he was like, "Beautiful, beautiful!" Amazing, amazing. And yeah, and of course we have the story of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who said, just a little bit before he was leaving his body, he said, life can't get any better than this. We know that he was seeing Vrindavan and the cowherd boys and all that. So Krishna is real. This process is very real. Krishna takes care of us, but we have to put in our effort, right? So one way to check, right, if we are going in the right direction or that we are making progress is to see, where do we take shelter when something happens in our life right now, when some small things happen, small dangers, small emergencies, where do we take shelter? Let's say we have an accident, we fall down, or, whatever. What's our first knee-jerk reaction? Where do we take shelter? Do I take shelter of logic, and try to figure out, maybe I should do this and maybe I should do that or whatever? Or, I was going through that a little bit last week. I got shingles, so nobody cut me or nobody hit me. I have a Band-Aid on my face. I'm just covering up the rash, an ugly looking rash. I have shingles on my face, and it's so it involves basically one of the nerves that supplies the face, and thankfully, it's not the nerve that supplies the eyes. But I was very anxious, and because I have medical background, right? I was trying to look up things and, like research papers, this, that, and whatever, and I was thinking, why am I doing this? I should just take shelter of Krishna. I was taking shelter of Krishna too, but as I was also using my logic, and I was really, like checking myself. Oh, wow, why should I even research? Why should I be in anxiety? Even if it is, going to affect my eye, or what will I achieve by being anxious? Let me just instead use this time, whatever time, to just take shelter of Krishna, and whatever happens will happen. It's the inevitable will happen. I don't have the power to control it. The best thing I can do is just take shelter of Krishna. So, but yeah, so we may take shelter of logic, or we may take shelter of anger, or blaming and crying and lamenting, and so we may go to these places when something happens. So this is something for us to see in our own life, and then practice, recognize where I'm going. That's a very, where our consciousness goes when something happens is very telling of, where our attachments are, right? Somebody will only think of their children, they won't think of Krishna, or, whatever, right? So we have to practice while living. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's speaking also about something else here. He's saying that one should regard a devotee of Krishna to be on the right path of the saints, even though such a devotee may seem to be Sudurachar, a person of loose character. One should try to understand the real purport of the word Sudurachar. So those of you who are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, there is this verse, right? Apichet Suduracharo bhajate mama nanyaba. Krishna says, Sadhureva samantavya samyak vyavati hohi saha. So what is Krishna saying there? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is reminding us of Krishna's vision. How does Krishna see devotees? He doesn't see like every little fault that we make. Rather, he tries to see where is our determination, where is our consciousness. And even if, we make some mistakes, even if we do something abominable, Krishna sees us as a saint if we continue practicing devotional service. He just sees that as, okay, this is something we slipped. It's all right. And then Prabhupada explains what is the reason why we may slip like that, right? So a conditioned soul has to act for double functions. One is the maintenance of the body, and the other is self-realization. So while we are trying to maintain our body, we are doing many things. Of course, we need to maintain our body. We spoke about this point earlier, right? When we spoke about vidya, and so on. So we need to maintain our body, because without a body, we cannot even chant. We cannot even serve. You know, even while we are chanting, if our mind is going off to some 10,000 places, because we are in this body, at least we can come back, you know, to this body, right? If we didn't have a body, we would just be like, you know, out there, right? So it's important for us to maintain our body. That means, you know, cleanliness and, you know, exercise, diet, you know, whatever, you know, medicines, you know, take care of it nicely. So maintenance of body, but we also work for the maintenance of body. And sometimes while working or whatever, you know, our past conditioned nature may just come out periodically. And then we may, you know, just goof up or even do something really abominable, actually. Krishna doesn't take it to heart. Krishna is a person of heart. He sees where our heart is. He knows what is just a slip, right? As much as a loving father, you know, if a child makes some mistake, he just understands that it's a mistake. He continues to love the child. Krishna is very much like that, right? And then there's a self-realization. So what does Prabhupada say? He says that the proportion of activities for maintenance of the body decreases, however, in proportion to the increase in devotional service. As long as the proportion of devotional service does not come to the right point, there is a chance for an occasional exhibition of worldliness. But it should be noted that such worldliness cannot continue for long, because by the grace of the Lord, such imperfections will come to an end very shortly. Therefore, the path of devotional service is the only right path. If one is on the right path, even an occasional occurrence of worldliness does not hamper one in the advancement of self-realization, right? So we can make, you know, all our efforts, but ultimately we also need mercy. It's becoming clear, right? By our effort alone, it's not going to happen. We see that it's only by Lord's grace we can get anywhere. So an important point here is that Krishna says apichet sudurachara, meaning he speaks that if someone accidentally does this, it's not like a deliberated, premeditated kind of mistake, right? If it is a deliberated, meditated upon mistake, not mediated, premeditated upon mistake, then, you know, it's different, because then it's willingly you're doing it. So how do we know that someone only accidentally falls? Mainly two things. He's fixed in his determination. Determination in what? In practicing his devotional service. And he continues practicing nicely. So fall down basically means that our determination fails. That means like we're neglectful, or we're just like totally, willfully doing something. That is what Krishna considers as fall down. So if you're not following the 4 regulative principles, if you're not chanting our 16 rounds every day after making vows, right? Then that's a fall down. But let's say you're very sick and, you know, someday the service is so much that you tried your best. We have to try our best. So this is the important part. It's not that just that I had so much service. No. But did I try my best to chant my rounds? Did I make time for it? I knew that service was going to come. So did I make sure to leave a block of time for chanting my rounds? if we tried our best and still somehow it didn't happen, let's say, by the end of the day, we were just so pooped that we couldn't do it, then Krishna may say, okay, it's fine. But then next day, we should make up for it, not that we leave it, right? So then that's showing Krishna that our determination is in the right place. So, that's really, normally sudurachar means it's just like, if you do something abominable, then normally it would be very simple and you would just go to hellish planets. But Krishna is giving this, really like a special concession for devotees. And why? Because devotees are very dear to him. And he sees that we're just stumbling. We'll discuss a very beautiful verse from the 11th canto in the next verse, which explains that also. So bhakti is the only way. So Prabhupada then quotes these 9 processes of devotional service to basically illustrate that this is the way we can stay connected constantly with the personal feature of the Lord, right? And previously we discussed, or you can tell me quickly, who perfected by hearing? Who perfected their life just by
Parikshit
hearing?
Maharaj.
Parikshit Maharaj. Okay, the next, all the pictures are here too, so it's very easy.
Glorifying the Lord.
Who recited?
Prahlad Maharaj.
Recited.
Sukdev Goswami.
Sukadeva Goswami, yes. Who perfected their life by remembering?
Prahlad Maharaj.
Prahlad Maharaj. Who perfected the life by serving the lotus feet of the Lord?
Goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi.
Lakshmi Devi, okay. Then who did by worshipping?
Ritu Maharaj.
Okay. Who did by offering prayers to the Lord?
Akura.
Akrura. Someone else answer, not the same person. Becoming his servant?
Hanuman.
Hanuman, okay, good. Just have to match the columns here, right? All the pictures are here. And the best friend?
Arjuna. Arjuna.
Surrendering everything unto him?
Bali Maharaj.
Bali Maharaj, okay. So these are the 9 processes of devotional service, and these different individuals, just by engaging in one process, they perfected their lives. So, Prabhupada then also talks about hearing and chanting of the science of God being the basic principle of devotional life. And very skillfully, he tries to also make the connection here between Shruti and Smriti, right? Prabhupada says, actually the explanation of this mantra and of practically all the mantras of the Vedic hymns is summarized in the Vedanta Sutra and properly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's really trying to create for all of us faith in Shruti or faith in Srimad Bhagavatam, because really that's our main scripture. He's using Smriti to create faith in Shruti, right? And he's encouraging us to really practice this during our life. So here is Sukadeva Goswami here and Maharaj Parikshit, and Maharaj Parikshit had asked, what is the duty of people in general, and what is the duty particularly of a person who's about to die? And what was Sukadeva Goswami's answer? Prabhupada quotes that verse here, very famous verse, Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma. We won't recite the whole thing, but basically this verse is saying that if you want to be free from all miseries, you must hear about, glorify, and remember the personality of Godhead. This is the way. This is the duty of people in general and the duty of a person who is about to die. He must hear, glorify, and remember the personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada ends the purport with saying, unless one is accustomed to devotional practice, what will he remember at the time of death when the body is dislocated? how can he pray to the Almighty Lord to remember his sacrifices? So we have to practice. There's no shortcut. We cannot say, I will just remember Krishna at the time of death. You know, I have a lot of willpower. I can do whatever I, you know, make up my mind to do. So I will remember Krishna at the time of death. Because remembering Krishna, it's not an intellectual remembrance. It's like a remembrance of the consciousness. So, last slide, I think, of this verse, sacrifice. So Prabhupada says, sacrifice means denying the interest of the senses. And he's telling us that we have to learn this art by employing the senses in the service of the Lord during one's lifetime. So it takes a lot of practice, because right now we like to use our senses in our service. So we have to make this paradigm shift. Somehow in this lifetime, we have to come to the point where we're always thinking in terms of serving the Lord in all our activities, all our activities. And then only one can utilize the results of such practice at the time of death. So, you know, we're all endeavoring, we're all sacrificing. Every day we're making sacrifices, right? But let us make the right kind of sacrifice. Sacrifice we have to make. But let us make the sacrifice or endeavor that will actually stop all other endeavors in future, right? We don't have to endeavor. Then it's just blissful life all the time. Yes, and this is also the teaching of Rishabdev, Tapo Divyam Putra Kayena Satam. He says that human life means that you have to practice Tapo Divyam, divine sacrifices or divine austerities. Austerities meant to please the Lord. Otherwise, it's not human life. And it's very interesting. I was looking up the dictionary meaning. Very interesting how closely it matches our devotional definition of sacrifice. The act of offering something to a deity in propitiation or homage, for feature of something highly valued for the sake of one considered to have a greater value or claim, relinquishment of something at less than its presumed value. So anyway, so sacrifice. So here's some personal reflection exercise. Maybe we can do it. Well, let's take 5 minutes or 7 minutes and try to do this. So everybody just sit in a relaxed way and take a few deep breaths. Take a few deep breaths. And you don't have to look at the slides. Take a few deep breaths. And the inevitable death is something. Wow. Somebody's microphone is not muted. If you could please see. All right. So take a few deep breaths and close your eyes. So at some point, we'll all have to face death. That's the inevitable truth. So can you now, please, if it's not too much for you, there's no pressure. Can you now, please, try to imagine that you're on your deathbed. That you're on your deathbed and you have a very short time left. And everything that you have is going to be taken away from you, right? You can't hold on to anything on your deathbed. Please see what kind of thoughts and feelings come to you. So because we have limited time, so we may have to pause in another minute. But I would encourage you to do this exercise and try to make a list of all the things that come to you. Because this can be very telling, and do it in a very serious way, this exercise. And then try to, make a list. And through the list, something may become evident of where our, attachments are, really. And then we can see how we can try to rechannel our energies in our practice of devotional service and try to work on some of these attachments step by step, right? It's very powerful if you can really enter deep into this meditation, but be careful, don't get depressed or anything. Also, here's something that you can do as a group, or couples can do it together. Discuss the role of prayer in our lives. Can we express anything to Krishna? The answer is yes, we can express anything to Krishna. But how is very important. We can talk to Krishna just about anything, but then how do we talk about it? And compose your personal prayer, expressing your own gratitude as well as regret, right? And then appeal for his mercy. Okay, so compose this personal prayer to the Lord. Any questions or comments on this verse? We'll take a few minutes and then go to the next verse. Any questions or comments? There's some.
There are some questions. If you want to entertain.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Mother.
Yes.
This is Achyuta. Please accept my humble obeisances. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Can you just show? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you just show the slide 17 again, please?
Slide 17. Hold on.
Just the previous one.
Can you see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So no questions or comments? Somebody, yeah, Ahmad.
On the 7.
Yeah. Hold on. Somebody here has a question.
You made a reference to taking shelter of Krishna. Is there a particular way of doing it? Is there a particular mantra or a series of sentences you recommend, or it's up to the individual to make up one? Okay.
So the question here, I don't know how many of you heard, but the question is, I mentioned about taking shelter of Krishna. So how do we take shelter of Krishna? Is there some verses or lines, or, how do we actually take shelter of Krishna? What's the process of taking shelter, right? A picture that comes to my mind is when there's rain. When do we take shelter? Usually we take shelter when, we feel a need for shelter. So in the case of taking shelter of Krishna, actually we have a constant need. The only thing is we don't feel that there is a need right now. When there's a rain, we take shelter of, some covered place. We run to the covered place. So it's like a position of safety. And so for us, we actually need the shelter of Krishna at every moment. But yet we don't recognize at this point that need, precisely because we are feeling shelter in so many other places right now, and therefore we don't, feel that we need to take shelter of Krishna at this moment. Whereas the very advanced devotees who are very realized about our precarious condition in this material world, they feel the need constantly, like the gopis, even the Vrajavasis, they feel that at every moment they need Krishna's shelter. So that's just one point, the need for shelter. It's there all the time. But at least we can start with when, there's something that happens, but also we can take shelter of Krishna at least when we are doing our sadhana, right? We're chanting, reading, then we are in the right place, right? Remember who we are chanting for and so on. So I don't have as such some particular verses that are jumping out right away for me. But of course, there's the prayers of Sharanagati of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There's like a series of prayers, many songs. There's like something like, I forget the exact number, something close to 80 songs, all about how to surrender to the Lord. Sharanagati means surrender. So how can we surrender? There's 6 limbs of surrender that he talks about. It's a big topic, so I won't go into it. But taking shelter really means that we're finding ourselves really at the lotus feet of the Lord and feeling his protection, feeling that he's our maintainer, feeling like very humble. These are the 6 limbs actually, that you're feeling yourself very humble. You're feeling that Krishna is your protector, your maintainer. And there's 2 other limbs of, accepting only that which is favorable to devotional service, rejecting anything that's not favorable to devotional service. And finally, offering one's whole self to Krishna. So there's like 5-6 songs in each of this category that Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes. Beautiful, beautiful. So those actually lead us step by step of how we can surrender more and more deeply to the Lord, right? But in simple words, it just means like, it's just like, think of how even a child takes shelter of a mother. What's the child doing basically? It's just going to the mother and feeling safe in the mother's hands or father's hands, because he knows, he has this confidence that my mother, my father, they're going to take care of me no matter what, right? That's how the child feels. So it's basically that movement. In fact, the word Sharanagati really means that. Sharan means the feet of the Lord, and Agati means to return. So, the English word surrender sometimes can have like somewhat of a negative connotation, but surrender really means returning to a true shelter. That in fact, that's the only place you can find shelter. There's no true shelter anywhere else. So it's this act of really just going to the Lord and feeling safety there in all ways, feeling dependence, feeling safety, feeling protection. Does that help?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Mataji, this is Gadai Gaurangas. Please have some humble businesses. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So I think you might already said this, Mataji. I think I missed that point. So here in the last 3 verses, so he says, please remember my good deeds, and also request for please remove your effulgence and show me your personal vision. So here, who is the person who is appealing to the Lord? Is it the author, or is it like is a devotee who is an author assuming the role of a devotee and showing us how to be pray to the Krishna, or who is that person who is doing all this?
My understanding is that it is not the author, but he's speaking about basically the devotee. The person who's going through these, steps, basically.
You mean the practitioner?
Yeah, the practitioner. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
There's a question here, last line. Please remember all I've done for you also means ignore my shortcomings or mistakes I've made, as in the last Gita verse, Lord says. Yes, and that's coming up in the next verse. Yeah. It's not exactly ignoring, but the next verse, you'll see the mood in which it's expressed, right? So that's why it helps so much to have these examples of how to properly pray also, because sometimes we don't know how to pray properly. So it's not like just ignore, but, kind of he's accepting his shortcomings and feeling that he can't do anything much about it. Somehow the Lord has to fill the gap and remember the good things that he did and, carry what he lacks, right? Like we talked about last week, carry what he lacks. And if the Lord feels that, he's not ready yet to go back to Godhead, then in the next verse, we're going to hear that at least lead me to the right path if you think I'm not qualified, and just guide me to that and free me from my sins. Okay? I was told one can remember prayers of Vritrasura and last verse of ISOPANISAD. Yeah, of course, you can remember these prayers. Actually, these prayers, mantra 17, 18, can also be chanted at the time of cremation for a person, who left their body. It's supposed to be nice to do that. Okay, and there was one question somebody was asking, last question, and then we'll do mantra 18 and take some more questions. Is there something online?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
This is Vineet from Seattle. Please
Yes.
accept my humble obeisances. My question is that now you have mentioned about like how one should feel so grateful to Krishna, that he'd always remember what we did, regardless of even if we don't remember what we do. And suddenly this gives a spike in my enthusiasm to reciprocate, but it'll take a week or two, and then I will forget that I'm supposed to take his shelter, and I'll come down again, and then so the cycle goes on and on. But how do we get out of that cycle?
Yeah. So first of all, we shouldn't be alarmed that we go through this cycle, because that's just where we are. We are in the stage of what is called as anishtata bhakti, or unsteady bhakti right now, because we are at the stage of anartha nivritti. And as long as anarthas are there or unwanted things are there within our heart, we will not find steadiness in our life. So it's bound to be that, we're going to go through these ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. But yet, the way we can experience steadiness somewhat in our life is, through steady sadhana, basically. Somehow or the other, whether we feel like it or we don't feel like it, we should chant our rounds. We should try to be attentive while chanting our rounds. Somehow or the other, make a little time for reading every day, right? We all chant our rounds, probably. Well, we should anyway. But somehow we don't take Prabhupada's instruction about reading his books very seriously. And in fact, this is the top reason, according to me, and according to many others also, why devotees struggle so much is because we're not reading regularly. Because we are not at a very advanced level of chanting. We're chanting. But even for chanting, if we read regularly, the conviction, the realization, really deepens each day. In fact, I always find that when I'm very absorbed in the Bhagavatam, my chanting is super nice, because that's what Bhagavatam does, or any Shastra for that matter. But what's the conclusion of Bhagavatam? Conclusion of Bhagavatam is to chant the holy name, right? That's expressed in the 12th canto. So reading regularly, very, very, very important, because that sharpens our spiritual intelligence each day. And when our spiritual intelligence is sharpened each day, then we can, direct our mind properly, right? And then the mind can direct the senses. Otherwise, what happens is senses, mind, it goes in the reverse order. And our intelligence is just totally sleeping, right? But reading every day, it's very important, very important. I can't emphasize it enough. And hearing also every day, finding some time to hear. I mean, nowadays it's so easy to hear. We can hear all the time with our gadgets, You can just put, lectures on it. You don't even need to put, because most people nowadays have unlimited, whatever internet on their phone, and you can just stream, right? There's thousands of lectures online. Just hear. So that's the way we can find some steadiness in our life. And so even if we forget something, the nature of Shastra is that, there's overlap all the time. So it's not that a concept you find in ISOPANISAD, it's only in ISOPANISAD and you won't find it anywhere else. In fact, for one who's regularly reading Shastra, and particularly if they're reading 2-3 books together, it's amazing. You read something in one book, and then you find such a resonance in another place, and then it resonates in another place. It just becomes like a symphony of music, You vibrate one chord here, and something vibrates there, and something vibrates there, and it's just like wonderful. You find all these connections, and you find the same point, and then you understand that same point in a much more, deeper way, right? So, yeah, that's the way. And also, if we have whatever we want to practice, I would say write it down. Writing down and making a strong sankalpa or goal is very, very powerful. Write it down and look at it periodically, and you will find that somehow or the other, it will then happen. When you just make a strong intention to apply it in your life, even if for some time it goes away, you will come back to it somehow. And you make a strong intention, because Krishna wants to help with our intentions. Is that okay, Vinay Prabhu?
Thank you so much, Mataji. Really like the writing down concept. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, so let's go to mantra 18 now. Hopefully we can finish. It's supposed to be not too long. All right, so now the devotee is going to completely surrender. This verse is about complete surrender. So he's requesting the Lord to direct him on proper path and free him from reactions to past sins and protect him so that he can go on without hindrance. So let's read. Agnenaya supatharai asman vishwani deva vayunani vidvan yuyodi asmad juhuranam eno bhuishtam te nama uktim vidhema. O my Lord, as powerful as fire, Agne, right? Powerful as fire. O omnipotent one, now I offer you all obeisances. So the devotee is basically feeling like, what can I offer you now? I can't offer anything. Everything is yours anyway. So I'm just going to offer you obeisances. So he's offering obeisances. In fact, this word namaha, na-maha, means like, na means nothing, ma is mine. So namaha means like nothing is mine. So like every day we sing, right? Nama Om Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale. So that's what we're saying. Nothing is mine. So I'm just offering obeisances. Falling on the ground at your feet. Oh my Lord, please lead me on the right path So he just wants to be protected. You know, he wants to be on the right path. He doesn't want to go here or there to reach you. And then he says, since you know all that I've done in the past, please free me from the reactions to my past sins so that there will be no hindrance to my progress. So, very, very beautiful verse. So there is this word juhuranam. Juhuranam means, what does Prabhupada translate as? All hindrances on the path. So these are obstacles basically on our path in spiritual life. And our acharyas comment that of all the obstacles, the main obstacle is one thing. It's called kutilam. That means crookedness in one sense, or duplicity. So it's basically the lack of honesty within our own selves, not accepting our impurities, you know, not just accepting even, you know, the positive things sometimes, basically not accepting the gifts or the imperfections that we have as they are. And we try to duplicitously portray ourselves or project ourselves as something that we are not. So that, our acharyas say, is the biggest obstacle in making spiritual progress. So stated very simply, if we are completely honest about our position, about ourselves, that means what? We're being humble, right? That's what humility means. It's just that we're accepting our real position, right? That's all humility means. Because if we accept our real position, then we are going to feel small, because we are small actually. Our capacity is very little. But most of the time we're projecting ourselves as being much more than what we are. Yeah. So this is the concluding prayer of the devotee who desires to achieve Krishna's mercy. And he's just throwing himself at the lotus feet of the Lord, and he begs for guidance and for help to become free of sins and sinful tendencies. So this is surrender, basically. Prabhupada starts the purport by saying, by surrendering to the Lord and praying for his causeless mercy, the devotee can progress on the path of complete self-realization. So we do not really have, as we just spoke, we do not really have the capacity to fully purify ourselves, but the Lord is omnipotent. The Lord is like fire. So even whatever amount of sin we have, he has the potency to purify ourselves. Sometimes we forget that, don't we? Sometimes when we become very aware of our faults, our anarthas, we become so overwhelmed and we become so down that, you know, I'm so bad, I can never make progress, right? We feel like that sometimes. But never forget that, you know, the Lord is there. The Lord is supremely powerful. We can't overcome it by ourselves. That's true. Accept it. Yeah, I cannot do this by myself. But if I surrender to the Lord, he will help me. So never forget to make that connection. When you're feeling that you're useless, the fact is, yes, we are useless. We are useless if we are not connected to the Lord. That's our true position. But we are useful if we are connected, right? So make that connection. So our effort is never going to be enough. So we're going to start Damodar month soon, right, on Sunday. So effort and mercy, those are the two lessons from that, you know, pastime too. Our effort is never going to be enough. We can make all the effort. Our effort is just a way to show to Krishna that, Krishna, I'm serious and I want you. I'll make all the effort. I'll be determined. I'm serious. But we can never reach, you know, without his mercy. Right? There's a beautiful prayer of Rupa Gosvami in Nectar of Devotion, in the section of Bhava, Ashabandha, hope against hope. It's a very beautiful prayer where Rupa Goswami is basically saying that I don't have a good birth. I have the prayer in front of me, actually. He says, I have no love for Krishna, nor for the causes of developing love for Krishna, namely hearing and chanting, and the process of bhakti yoga by which one is always thinking of Krishna. I don't have knowledge, I don't have piety, I can't even do all these activities properly, and above all, I'm not born in a nice family. Therefore, what do? I simply pray to you, Krishna, Gopijana Vallabha. I simply wish and hope that some way or the other I may be able to approach your lotus feet. And this hope is giving me pain because I think myself quite incompetent to approach that transcendental goal of life. So he's feeling hopeless, but yet he's hopeful because of Krishna. This is a very nice prayer that we can take shelter of. There's always a hope against hope with Krishna. And after that, Prabhupada again emphasizes the importance of human life. And here again, he's speaking about his particular emphasis is on developing Brahmanical qualities, that we don't become a Brahmana just by birth, but actually we have to cultivate those qualities. Even if you're born in a Brahmanical family, you have to cultivate these qualities. And usually it takes several lifetimes to become a Brahmana, but Prabhupada says, but by adopting a devotional attitude, we can become a Brahmana in this life and we can surpass all obstacles. And then he quotes the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where those yogis who have practiced in their previous life for a short time, but then they didn't finish their practice, what happens to them? They either take birth in a rich family or they take birth in a family of Brahmanas, right? So that they can pick up from where they left, because so such a birth affords higher chances. And then he quotes also 1866 of Bhagavad Gita, just saying that at whatever stage you are, for us it's very easy. So this is the part where Prabhupada says that if you adopt this devotional attitude and just surrender to Krishna, then you can develop these qualities of Brahmana very quickly. And then in the next section, Prabhupada is talking about how the Lord gives direction, right? For devotees, Lord gives direction. For non-devotees, they're just at their own mercy, right? They have no help really from Krishna. So this is a very beautiful verse, 11.5.42. And in that purport, Prabhupada makes some very nice points that I want to point out to you. He says, devotional service is so pure and potent that a surrendered devotee of the Lord has no need to perform any other purificatory process, right? There's no need for any atonement for an accidental fall down, since devotional service is itself the most purifying process. And then Prabhupada also speaks, not Prabhupada actually, it's disciples of Prabhupada have written this purport. So here he also says, realizing that everything and everyone is part and parcel of the Lord, a devotee automatically is not inclined to commit sinful activities by violating the order of the Lord. However, due to the powerful influence of material nature, even a sincere devotee may be temporarily overwhelmed by illusion and deviate from the rigid path. So what happens then? Then Krishna himself is acting from within his heart and he removes such sinful activities. And this is the part that I really like in the later part of the purport. He says, the Vedic scriptures are the direct orders of the personality of Godhead, right? So one may ask the question that how can Krishna tolerate it if someone, neglects that order, even if they're devotees? Why does the Lord tolerate it, right? So then the answer is given here, is the use of this word priyasya in this verse, meaning that the devotees of the Lord are very dear to the Lord. And then he gives the example of the child, that although the beloved child may accidentally commit an abominable activity, the father forgives. So devotees are so dear to the Lord. He doesn't take, these things very seriously. And so this causeless mercy of the Lord upon his devotees is his parama aishwaryam, or his supreme opulence, right? Gradually, the faithful devotee becomes free even from accidental fall down, because simply by remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, what to speak of by actively rendering service to him, his heart is completely purified. Beautiful, right? So dear to the Lord. So there's a lot of hope, my dear devotees. Never give up hope. The Lord is very kind. Then, Prabhupada says, in this mantra of Sri ISOPANISAD, the devotee prays to the Lord to rectify him from within his heart. To err is human. A conditioned soul is very often apt to commit mistakes, and the only remedial measure to take against such unintentional sins is to give oneself up to the lotus feet of the Lord, so that he may guide one to avoid such pitfalls, right? That's the only way, really. Otherwise, it's impossible in one sense, to stop committing all sin altogether. So then we have no hope then? No, we have hope. We have hope because of the Lord. There was this one time when Dhanurdhar Swami, he was on a parikram and he was going with some devotees. And, they were passing by some small local temple. And Dhanurdhar Swami had already given some donation. And then this one other devotee that he was with, he was trying to give some further donation. And Dhanurdhar Swami turned to this devotee and he said, that's enough, I already offered something. And then the pujari in that place, the priest in that local temple, he turned to Dhanurdhar Swami and said, it's a big sin to stop somebody from giving charity to the Lord. And then Dhanurdhar Swami thought, wow, there's so many sins, like there's no end. How do we stop everything? The only way to stop everything is by, chanting carefully and somehow or the other just becoming transparent instruments in service of the Lord. So one thing we should always remember is that Krishna sees our heart. He's not just looking at the activities themselves. Krishna is looking at our consciousness. He's not like a judge who's sitting up there, aha, I caught you doing the wrong thing. And now you did the wrong thing. And now you did the wrong. No, he's not like that. He's a person of heart. In fact, he's always saying, aha, you did the right thing. And then forever, that's imprinted in Krishna's mind. He's not actually trying to see just our wrong things. So he is Rishikesha also, right? That means he's the master of senses. So somehow we should come to a point where we really allow him to direct all our activities, right? And if he directs all of our activities, then, nothing is a sin. Nothing is a sin. Even if from a moral standpoint, it doesn't seem right. But because it was directed by Krishna, inspired by Krishna, it's not a sin. And therefore we say a pure devotee can never make a mistake, because all his senses are completely directed by Krishna. And how does the Lord give direction? He gives direction from without as Guru, Shastra, and Vaishnavas, and from within as Super Soul, right? You want to hear a nice book distribution story of how the Lord inspires from within? So there was this devotee who was distributing books, and then they knocked on one door. This was somewhere in Europe. I heard it a long time back. And they knocked on somebody's door, and this, kind of older lady opens the door, And he says, please come, please come. Did you bring books for me? You know, I have been waiting for you all morning. And the devotees say, how did you know we were coming? And so then this lady says, you know, I was reading Bible yesterday, and I really wanted to understand much more. I wanted more knowledge. I wanted more depth. I really wanted to understand who God is. And then I saw like a dream. I saw these angels. And you were there. You were one of those angels. And then there were some other angels too. You were one of those angels. And, you know, you said that you would come tomorrow and bring me some books, which will give me more knowledge, right? So this is just, you know, totally Krishna giving this direction. This person had a desire, and, you know, Krishna is giving direction, and, you know, through devotees, through Shastra, right? And also as super soul, in the form of these dreams or whatever. And especially, you know, when we are struggling, so to say, with something, and if you're really trying to take shelter of the Lord, then those are the times you can really feel the Lord's guidance. His guidance sometimes is very soft. It's very subtle. So we have to have the subtle consciousness, you know, to pick up his guidance, but he will give us guidance. So try it when you're struggling with something. Really take shelter of the Lord. Chant deeply or read Bhagavatam very deeply, and you will find that the Lord will whisper to you. And especially approach him in this way. What am I to learn through this intense ordeal, my dear Krishna? Please give me some insight, and he will give you that insight. And it's very beautiful, especially at the time of an ordeal. Krishna becomes then so present, then you completely feel Krishna's shelter, and you feel held by Krishna. And the ordeal is there, but that's okay. And here is a beautiful passage from Ramayana, which explains how we are protected at all times, and there's no chance, you know, of falling down when we take shelter of the Lord, right? This section basically appears when, what's his name? Vibhishan. Vibhishan leaves the company of Ravana, and he tries to come to Ram, and he's coming down on this, some kind of like flying machine. And Sugriva sees him, and he turns to Ram and he says, we should kill him. And Ram says to Sugriva, you know, why do you want to kill him? He's coming alone. You know, what can he do really? You know, he's one person. What harm can he do? And so then Sugriva still says, no, maybe, you know, he's just coming alone first and something else, or, you know, maybe he's lying, we should kill him. And Ram says no. And then he speaks these two verses. I'll just read this last verse. It's my eternal principle that if any living being takes shelter of me, even once, saying, I'm yours, then I award that person freedom from all fear. In fact, Ram says that even if Ravan were to come here and take my shelter, I will accept him. I cannot refuse. Any person who comes and takes shelter, I will not be able to refuse. And then he speaks this verse. And Prabhupada ends this with how the whole process is summed up in these verses of Bhagavatam. And again, Prabhupada in these verses also, through these verses, is instilling faith again in the Bhagavatam, right? And what are these verses? Again, these verses are talking about the 9 stages of bhakti. These are the 9 stages of bhakti. And you can go through it. So it starts with hearing and chanting. So there's little basic faith, right? And when there's little basic faith, then you come in the association of devotees. When you come in the association of devotees, then you perform devotional service. You practice hearing and chanting. Then you practice hearing and chanting. Then the unwanted things from the heart are removed. That's anartha nivritti, right? when 75%, Prabhupada quoted this at one time, when 75% of the anarthas are removed, then you become steady in your devotional service, nishta. And then there's more taste, and then there's very deep attachment, and then there is feelings for God, ecstasy, and then there is prema. Okay? And then all doubts are removed and one becomes a pure devotee. Oh, I don't know what happened to that. Anyway, so the conclusion, the highest perfection is to know the Bhagavan feature of the absolute truth, begging for his mercy, for loving service. And so then please do this another little exercise. Reflect on your own spiritual failures, mistakes, bad habits, shortcomings, all your bad stuff, yucky stuff. Make a list and then see what kind of feeling comes for you when you make this list. What's your attitude towards them right now? And then see if you can change that to really accepting them fully, that this is a part of me, without feeling that you're bad and without feeling that you're a failure. See that these are just external to you, but this is the conditioning that I have right now. And then actually turn to real humility, that I am very small and I am very imperfect, right? Whenever you feel that you're imperfect, there's two ways you can go. You can just go down and feel bad, or you can just go to the path of humility, which is that, I am just very small and that's okay. And then write a heartfelt prayer calling out for the mercy, while fully accepting the limitations. And then submit this prayer to your deities. Do it. It's very, very powerful. And it's 8:30. Any questions or comments? Done with the verse. ISOPANISAD, the knowledge that brings one nearer to the Supreme. I hope all of you are feeling a little closer to the Supreme. And all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Mataji. This is
Hold on a
Raj.
second. Hold on a second. There's a question here.
Throughout the course, we've seen references to self-realization. The next step would be union with Krishna, God realization, correct? We don't see God realization in the literature.
Okay, so basically, the way we use the word self-realization, actually self-realization and God realization happen together in the path of bhakti. So both are happening simultaneously. Your real self is awakening, and also from the beginning of the practice of bhakti, we are making that connection with God, isn't it? In our chanting, in our hearing, in our reading, we are making that connection with God. So there is some realization of God. It may not be full, but there is that connection happening. So it's simultaneous. In fact, self-realization without God realization is incomplete. You cannot have full self-realization because our self is a part and parcel of God. Right?
But, when self-realization is completed, then the union with Krishna takes place.
No, union with Krishna, we heard about that. We never merge with Krishna. You got that point, right?
Say again?
When you say union with Krishna, you mean to say our relationship with Krishna is fully awakened, right? Not union.
Right. You don't.
Not merge.
You don't merge.
Right. Yeah, when our true self is fully awakened, our relationship, yes. Okay, Raj Prabhu.
Yeah, I don't know how this question is, but I have two questions. One is,
Okay.
if Krishna is merciful, then why do we have to beg for his mercy? And another question is, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he doesn't do any partiality. I don't remember the verse. then why does he like the devotees more?
Aham sarva bhuteshu name dveshto astina priya. That's the verse. That I see everybody equally. I'm not partial to anyone. So you're saying, why is he partial to devotees?
Yeah, why he likes the devotees more?
Well, because the devotees like him. He's not being partial. He's actually just reciprocating, because there is also the other verse that, what is it? Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tathaiva bhajamyaham, right? So as one surrenders unto me, I respond, reciprocate accordingly. So the partiality is only apparent partiality. It's not a real partiality, because the devotees, are seeing Krishna as so dear, and they're giving their whole life to Krishna. So Krishna also gives his whole life to devotees. In fact, he allows himself to become controlled by the devotees, right? Because the devotees are allowing themselves to become fully be controlled by Krishna and his desires. So he allows Mother Yashoda to bind him. Who can bind Krishna? But Mother Yashoda binds him. So we'll discuss this point much more deeply in Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
But yeah, it's only an apparent partiality. And regarding Krishna is all merciful, but why do we have to ask him? Like in our language, there's a saying that, a mother doesn't give food, without the child asking. Even, a mother feeds the child only when the child asks. There's a saying like that. So it's just to say that Krishna is always merciful. But then when somebody is really calling out to him, then he especially turns to him even more. Even more. Krishna's mercy is always there, but the reason we are not able to see his mercy oftentimes is because our heads are turned somewhere else. Our attention is somewhere else. So really speaking, it's only about, this calling out is basically about trying to intensely turn ourselves towards Krishna. And when we turn ourselves intensely towards Krishna, then we find Krishna's mercy, It's really like that.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Okay, I think we'll end. There's something in the chat. What? You're teaching Seva and hard. Right. It is two halves of the same verse 929. I envy no one, nor am partial to anyone, unequal to all, but whoever renders service. And yes, Prabhu, it is. I just didn't quote the entire verse, but thank you so much for quoting the entire verse. All right. Thank you all very, very much. Have a wonderful Krishna conscious week. May you all intensely turn to Krishna and to the teachings of ISOPANISAD. And really don't try to postpone your exam. Just take it. It's not going to be difficult. Krishna will help. And I'm going to make the first exam very easy. So please don't be nervous at all. And I will send another email tomorrow regarding some further details and instructions about the exam. Some people are asking some questions about how short is short and how long is long. Of course, all that will be told at the time of exam, but I will share a few more things tomorrow. And also some instructions for the proctors and so on. And just one thing I'll say, that the exam needs to be written. You cannot type the exam, because typing means then you can go anywhere on the internet and get all the answers. So typing is not allowed. And so I'll send the rest of the instructions by email tomorrow. So please, please do read the emails. We have a number of devotees who don't read.
Mataji, it's been ages we have written anything with hand, Mataji.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll give you extra time. We're not strict on time.
And the handwritings are worst.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the instructions. Please make sure that I can read.
Yeah, it's been like at least 20, 25 years we have written something.
You haven't written for 2020?
We have been typing
Who's that?
all the time.
Okay. Yeah, you've been typing. Right now, at least, we don't have any facility where we can provide our own computers and then you can just log in and type.
I'm talking about. I've last time when I gave the Bhakti Shastri, I gave it in my laptop and then send it as a mail, if that is okay.
Then somebody needs to be proctoring extremely closely. They need to be behind you watching all the time to make sure that you're not going to the internet or the database. You know, that's the only condition under which that may be allowed. So I need really like a guarantee from the proctor. Of course, ultimately, ultimately, I would say that it's between you and Krishna. You know,
yeah.
If you want to cheat, you may pass the Bhakti Shastri, but you're not going back to Godhead.
Yeah, certainly. That is the essence, right? There is nothing that we are going to achieve by cheating or doing anything of that sort.
Who is this?
We are just trying to. This is Chaitanya Rasadas.
Oh,
from
Chaitanya
Boston.
Rasa Prabhu. Okay.
It's between us and Krishna.
Yeah. But anyway, it's going to be a written exam.
Yeah.
You know, that's how ISKCON board likes it. And we don't really have the facility. And especially for remote participants, you know, what control do I have? You know, I just have to trust the proctors, you know. But yeah. So, try to respect the little few rules and regulations that we have.
Okay, Mataji. Sure. I'll try practicing from now on to write.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna.